Hi, my name is TJ. My dad died of overdose on January 1st, 2011, and my mom is a recovering addict. God helped my mom, and now together we are here to help you. Now let's talk recovery. Here's your host, my mom, Susan Sexton Wood.
Hi, and welcome to Let's Talk Recovery. I'm your host, Debbie Lahman, and today I will be hosting the show without our normal host and the Executive Director of Unchained Praises, Susan Sexton Wood. She's a little under the weather today, so I'm sure that no matter when this particular program views, she certainly would still appreciate your prayers, so I appreciate you doing that. But tonight we have with us one of our co-workers at Unchained Praises, and that would be Steph Alana. And hi, Steph, how you doing?
Hello, I'm doing good.
You're doing good. Okay, and Steph has her own story, if you will, her own testimony. And I'm going to have Steph share that with you in just a second. But in the meantime, why don't you tell everybody what you do for Unchained Praises?
I write grants for Unchained Praises, and I research for Unchained Praises. Basically, I look for funding so we can keep on doing our services, and I try to find ways to, for programs or for other avenues, so we can keep providing ideas and
our
support.
Services free.
Yeah, for those
right.
people in need out there.
Correct. Good. Well, I know that Steph is anxious about starting to share her testimony. And so, Steph, I'm just going to let you just go ahead and you just share it. And I will kind of say this ahead of time. Steph gets a little nervous sometimes when she does this. And so she kind of has it all typed out, on her phone. So if you see her kind of looking like this, that's why. It's just kind of her support system to just help her through this. But I know that you'll be patient with her as well. So Steph, go ahead and tell us.
Okay. Okay, so I do apologize for not looking up, but this is just how I do my testimony. Okay. Hello, I'm a recovering addict whose name is Stephanie. It all started when I was 12. I endured trauma, and of course, I kept it a secret. But as we have come to realize, keeping secrets keeps you sick. I became withdrawn, suicidal, and I felt worthless and alone. I didn't talk to anyone about it because I felt so ashamed about what happened. A couple years later, another traumatic event occurred, but I felt that liquor helped me feel better. I didn't really understand how, but I looked forward to feeling drunk, feeling like I didn't have one single care or problem. My mind felt dizzy. I didn't feel so lousy. I didn't feel so consumed. I didn't feel. So I searched for more ways to be numb. I turned to weed and LSD and still drinking every time I had the opportunity. At 15, I ended up meeting a special guy. I wanted to marry and have children with him. I wanted him in my future, and that's exactly what happened. We dated a few years, got married at 18, had one boy and one girl. Over the span of our relationship, we already had made drinking liquor and smoking weed a regular thing. Of course, I never drank or smoked throughout the pregnancies, but I still partied every time I had the chance. Before I knew it, our excessive drinking and smoking weed led to using cocaine regularly. But at least we felt good when we did it, and we had lots of good times for a while. Over the years, I found myself in an abusive and unfaithful marriage. I was in denial about how bad things had become until one day my 9-year-old son looked me in the eyes and said, "Mom, I think life would be better if you divorced Dad." The thought of being divorced devastated me. This was the only man I had ever been in love with, and I had tried everything to make him happy, even staying by his side through affairs and everything else that had went on. On top of that, I had found out I had bulging discs in my back. So through the marital troubles, keeping up with my family and work, I went through physical therapy, chiropractor sessions, and 2 rounds of spinal injections. Then finally, relief. My doctor put me on pain medication, introducing me to a miracle pill called Oxycontin. This pill not only took away my physical pain, but my stresses too. Things didn't seem to bother me as much. I was in a much better mood. A year and a half goes by taking these magic pills as directed, but then a close friend of mine tells me that I could snort them. It'll reach your system quicker, she said. And then my friend and her husband had the great idea that would stretch the magic at a cheaper cost. I started selling some of my prescription and buying heroin to compensate. Now, I know it sounds like it happened quick, but it happened over like a period of time. So after that happened, it just like went downhill really fast. The first taste of heroin and nothing else was good enough. Not even my magic pills seemed as enticing. Eventually, snorting once or twice a day turned into snorting 6 or 8 times a day. So here I was at 28 years old, a full-blown heroin user. Even though I was working full-time and taking care of my kids, I knew heroin and pills had taken over my life. I didn't want to believe it, though. It got so bad my sinuses were being destroyed and I could no longer snort anymore. Still, I denied its control. I began injecting. I was already snorting it, so shooting it got in my system quicker. I kept telling myself I didn't have a problem because I was working, paying my bills, and keeping up with my kids' activities. I didn't think it was a risk whatsoever that I was taking my stuff with me to campus company meetings and events or on business trips in different parts of the country. Besides, the doctor thought I needed my prescription still, so I was justified. In 2010, I got laid off from my job and had extra money with my severance package, plus I had extra side money from the pills I sold. The kids and I were okay for a while. A few years went by, and paying my bills on time became harder to do. 2013, I lost my apartment and had to move in with my parents. It made things so much easier for me. I didn't have to pay rent or any of the utilities anymore, and I could save my extra money. My doctor had switched me to Oxycontin since it was cheaper, and all my extra money was going to heroin. I didn't feel guilty because some of the money was also going to having fun with the kids. My kids loved Grandma and Grandpa's house. They were fine. My parents loved that we were living with them again. So behind the scenes, I had to make sure that all the outings I took the kids on were prepped the right way. I took it with me on trips to museums, vacations, just everywhere, and I didn't care about the risk. Obviously,
And you were still functioning all this time of continuing in your drugs, but still trying to kind of have a facade that you're fine.
Yeah, it was. Every time I think about that, it's just crazy the way everything just.
Go on, please.
Okay. Okay, so, so here my parents were both working full-time, paying all the bills. I was working only part-time, not responsible for any bills. My car was paid off. My parents had added me to their automobile insurance. The kids didn't mind staying at Grandma and Grandpa's house while Mom ran around to make her random last-minute quick trips. So I would use excuses, like, oh, I forgot my makeup bag, or I forgot my wallet, or. But then tragedy struck in my family. My oldest sister was in a horrible motorcycle accident and was almost killed. It left her paralyzed from the sternum down. A tree had fell on her motorcycle, so it severed her spine. My parents ended up moving to DC immediately. That left me at their house to take care of only their utilities. They were paying the mortgage. My ex-husband and I had kept our relationship even after our divorce. We had become using together. So it was, it didn't matter, our past didn't matter. All we cared about was our drug. So it was a stupid relationship, really. But nearing the end of 2014, my parents decided They needed to sell their house here in Richmond, expecting to come home to pack and store the rest of their belongings. Instead, they came home to find a lot of things missing, valuable things. You see, he and I had not been able to keep a steady job, and I was only able to keep a part-time job at minimum wage. So my ex and I had pawned anything and everything we could. Like we didn't pawn jewelry, but it was more like tools or stereo, you know.
Now, did you have the children with you at this time?
Yeah.
So you were both there with the children?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, they were still going to school, and I was getting assistance, you know, but
Sure.
so they were there. They were there for the entire thing. They saw everything. So when they came home, they knew that something needed to be done, and it just all happened really fast. They decided that we needed to just go to DC like right now. So they took me and the kids, and we moved, and I ended up having to detox and withdraw on my own in DC for like a few weeks. I had brought some Suboxone strips with me, which that helps with withdrawal symptoms. But by like the second week, I couldn't take it anymore, and I knew that I had a prescription due in Richmond. So I convinced my dad to drive all the way to Richmond for, I don't even remember what excuse I used, but my dad and I drove all the way to Richmond just so I could get my prescription here. And he made that trip for me here. And
At this time, did your parents have any idea that you were in addiction?
yeah,
They did know?
yeah, they thought I was coming back to get on a different medication. And the way that everything happened too, it was like the doctors made me sign, you know, something, and I was like, see, you know, I'm getting better. Like it was just manipulation and lies all around.
Sure.
I just managed to become this thing that everything that came out of my mouth was just constant lies. So I knew that if I had a current prescription, when I went back to DC, I'd be able to carry that on there. That was my goal. So when I was back in DC, that's what I did. I found a doctor that would be able to go ahead and give me my new prescription. So I started getting my new prescription in DC. My new doctor thought it would be better to increase the dosage because I had went a few weeks without it. So before I knew it, I found my pills getting low once again. I knew I would have to start work soon, and I knew I needed to function. So I got desperate enough to scope out the neighborhoods in DC to see if I could spot either a user or a dealer. I didn't care that these streets were a whole different world compared to what I was used to. And they were really different compared to Richmond, like totally different. I didn't care though. Now I would care, but I didn't then. Fortunately, I was able to gain some locals' trust pretty quickly, and I found a connect with no issues. I was so proud of myself, and I every time I think about that, I'm like, oh my gosh, to be proud of that is just ridiculous to me now. So my sister and I ended up getting an apartment in this building. My parents had an apartment a few floors up. And since she was my big sister, she always took care of me. She paid the majority of the bills, and I just paid like a small little portion of the bills. And I still had enough money though to buy my heroin. I used my prescription for like the first 2 weeks. I had 120 pills, and it barely lasted me 2 weeks. And I used the last, you know, of the month for heroin. The amount you got there was different than the amount you got here. You get more there. I don't know why it's different, but it is. I thought I had everything under control again until one day after work, I ended up injecting too much and I overdosed. My son broke open the bathroom door to find his mother unconscious on the floor. I wasn't breathing. After calling my dad to tell him his mom was unconscious, My children watched as my dad gave me CPR, waiting on the paramedics to arrive. I woke up to the medics working on me. My drug use was a secret. They didn't drug test me. My track marks were hidden because I was wearing scrubs. I became a dental assistant while I was there. And after checking my vitals and asking common sense questions, my overdose was masked by the official diagnosis of physical exhaustion and stress. So I was in the clear. And just like that, that was it. No drug screen, nothing. At the time, I wondered how I was still alive. Did I just OD? Looking back, I felt this pull inside, and I felt like this. It was almost like a longing pull.
Mm-hmm. Sure.
And I mean, I knew what it was. I just didn't want to admit it. My last year there, I had to move in with a friend from work, and my sister had to move in with a different friend of her own. We were never able to stay ahead financially. That was my fault, so we had to make that decision to move separately. My kids had never adjusted to the big city, and they moved back with their dad here in Richmond. It turned out he had turned his life over to God. He had gotten clean on his own, and he had made a stable life for him and the kids here. So, I was really happy for him. So they moved back here with him, and so here I was living with my coworker and a friend who liked to drink and smoke crack. And I know that sounds, every time I say it, I laugh. It's not funny, but crack wasn't really my thing because it just wasn't, but it was there, and it was a pastime that my roommate and I did a lot. So it just helped my whole situation out because I met more connections. And I ended up getting a couple of side jobs. One was driving to Baltimore on a weekly basis with a dealer to get heroin. The second one was taking another dealer home every single night by 11 p.m. They both paid me in heroin. Occasionally, I would have to take them to Union Station so they could get the stuff from New York on the train. And then I would have to pick them back up in the middle of the night. As soon as they would call, I'd have to just go. So I was pretty much at their beck and call on their time. They didn't seem to remember I had a full-time job. They didn't care, of course not. So my script of 120 Roxys would barely last me a full week anymore by this time. Heroin was guaranteed me daily, so I indulged myself with extra Roxy shots is what I called them. Whenever I was having a good day, a bad day, whenever I was just having a day. I smoked crack to keep me awake for the late night drives. I was shooting up at work, at home, on the road. Even while I was driving, my kids being gone had devastated me, but I thought they were better off with their dad now, since he was sober and stable. And I used until I couldn't feel anything anymore, hiding from the fact that my teenagers still needed their mom. It didn't faze me one bit when I would wake up on the bathroom floor, knots on my head from falling out, or random bruises on my body from staggering around my room. I would laugh it off, making sure I hadn't dropped or lost any heroin while nodding out or falling down. I was always making mental notes just to be more careful next time. One evening I was in a hurry, so I ended up doing one of my shots in the car. Doing one of my driving moves is what I called them, and I pulled over, and I was shooting in my neck because my arms were really sore. So I did my neck shot, and I just went to go start to drive again, and that's the last thing I remember. I ended up totaling my dad's car, and I was on a two-way street, and how I ended up rolling the car 3 times, and how I managed to do that. I didn't hurt anybody else. I just hit parked cars. There was people everywhere. But I don't know. It was amazing that I didn't hurt anybody else. Mm-hmm. So that was a big wake-up call for me. And my sister ended up finding my pack one night when I was there at her apartment, and they were like, what are we going to do? So I told them that if I stayed there, I was going to just spiral out of control. and I told them that I needed to come back to Richmond, and and I, with the help of a friend that was still here, he was actually an ex-boyfriend of mine. He told me that if I came back to Richmond, he would allow me to have the kids move in with me, and I still needed to get my back surgery done. So he was like, if you can get this stuff done and do it the right way. So I ended up moving back to Richmond, and I was determined to stay clean, and I did when I got back for about 3 weeks, and I was literally just crossing the street, and I heard my name being called, and it was my birthday, and it was an old friend, and she just was like, "Hey," and that's all it took. Like, as soon as I saw her face, I was like, "Do you still use?" And she was like, "Every now and then." And then I lost my sobriety right then and there. Like, it was already in my mind before I even did it. So from that moment on, it just got worse, and I started injecting again, and I ended up getting arrested. I went to jail. I got put on probation. I started doing IoT treatment or IoT through Centerstone, and I kept failing my drug screens. And my probation officer was like, "Something's got to give. Like, you either are going to be in this lifestyle or you're going to be in this lifestyle, because you're straddling and it's not working. What you're doing is not working." By this time, I had already OD'd like 4 more times, and every single time every time I would, it was just, I had become numb to it. I remember my probation officer had even said, like, she showed me my screens, and they were coming back with fentanyl, and it didn't bother me. Like, I was just like, okay, I kind of made peace with knowing that this drug was just going to be a part of my life forever.
But of course, you did make a change.
Yeah.
And that was when you finally went, and I don't mean to
No,
hurry
no,
this
no,
up, because this is fascinating.
Yeah.
It really is. But if we fast forward just a little bit,
Yeah.
then you finally ended up where?
I ended up, I went to detox at Meridian. I completed the 28 days. Then I went reluctantly to Crossroad. I didn't want to stay, but I started seeing things happening there to the girls, and I just noticed little things, little changes. I started feeling different inside. I started feeling warmth and love, and the counselor that I had there, she was amazing, and I felt just...
But let me stop you there, because you're saying you felt warmth and love. You felt warmth and love in your family, didn't you?
Yeah, but it was different.
Exactly, and that's my point, is that sometimes, sometimes you can be in addiction because you have a family life, your parents weren't, and you didn't have that. You had a very loving family. And so to see this in a different way with, the people that you associate with other than family, it was a warmth and love that you hadn't experienced, because all that you had experienced before with this warmth and love was never warmth and love. It was, money for your hit,
Right.
and satisfaction for you from that. Let me ask you this, because your life has completely changed.
Completely.
And what do you attribute that to? What is the main thing that you attribute that to?
To God.
To God.
That I couldn't have done it without Him.
No.
There's no doubt about it whatsoever.
And you have a wonderful relationship. You've always had a wonderful relationship with your children. And they have been totally so supportive. As we said before, we work together at Unchained Praises, and I've had the opportunity of seeing you with your children and seeing how they are, and I don't see any animosity from your children towards you at all.
Not now.
And well, obviously it was
Yeah.
before, and I know that for you, your biggest regret is that they had to experience that with you. You know, they had to see, and when I say with you, because you are, when you're in addiction, your family is with you, whether
Yeah.
you like it or not.
Yeah.
As much as you try to hide it, you're only hiding it from, you know, you're fooling yourself. You're not fooling anybody around you at all. So the big change came through going to Crossroad.
Yes.
And having that, and it wasn't easy at first. Did you leave there once and then come back?
No, that was at the Meridian.
At Meridian,
Yeah.
okay. So when you were at Crossroad, you stayed
Yeah.
for the whole time.
Yeah.
That was good. I've talked with other people before, and I know some of them have left and then they came back, and so I wanted to make sure of that. So I want you to look in the camera, and I want you to talk to somebody who is what Steph Alana was. What can you say to them?
Just don't give up. If you trust in Him,
Over there.
don't give up. I know it seems hard, and it seems like you won't ever be able to get away from this disease, this addiction, but it's nothing but the devil. Lean on God, trust in Him, and everything will fall into place.
And you can't do it alone, can you? Because you've been through previously detox, you've been sober, but you've not really been into a full-time recovery. Because what is recovery? What do we talk about in Unchained Praises? What is recovery?
Recovery is just it's in community. It's hope. It's God. I don't even know how to.
Well, recovery is not just, okay, on September
Oh, yeah.
23rd, my recovery will be over with, because it's a
It's a
certain
lifestyle.
amount. Exactly.
Yeah.
And that's what I wanted you to say, because that's the one thing, and I've heard you say it
Yeah.
before when we're talking, you know, in the office and everything, that one of the things that we've learned in dealing in addiction and in recovery is sobriety is one thing, recovery is another, because recovery is an absolute for the rest of your life. I've heard you say that many, many times as different things in your life, and people who have been in your life who don't understand that, who
Right.
don't understand that this is a lifetime. It doesn't end at a certain date, on a certain time, in a certain year. It is continuing, because there's always those triggers that you have to watch out for.
Yeah.
And that's what you learn each and every day. And that's what we're saying to you, is that Unchained Praises is here. We are here to help you through those individual recoveries that each person has. We want to thank Steph for being with us today, and we want to thank you for joining us, and ask you again, please continue to pray for Unchained Praises as we help our community and we help you. Have a good night. Thank you.